Emma Turner believed she had the perfect life: a loving husband, a devoted mother, a beautiful home, and a sweet 6-year-old daughter, Lily. For 8 years, she and Daniel had crafted a life that looked perfect from the outside, the kind of family you see smiling in Christmas cards. Her widowed mother, Margaret, was a constant, comforting presence in their home, helping with Lily, cooking, and blending seamlessly into their daily routine. It was a life of peace, stability, and, Emma thought, happiness. But illusions, no matter how beautiful, are fragile. Slowly, subtly, cracks began to appear in Emma's perfect world. Daniel, her charming, doting husband, started staying out late. New clients, he'd say, late meetings. He'd come home looking drained but distant, his mind a million miles away. Their conversations shortened, his affection felt practiced. And he stopped noticing the little things about her that he used to love. At the same time, her mother began to change. Margaret, a graceful woman in her late 50s, started dressing up more, wearing perfume and makeup even when she was just staying home. Emma tried to dismiss it, thinking her mother was simply rediscovering herself after years of being a widow. But a quiet, gnawing suspicion began to take root. She started noticing things. The way Daniel and Margaret would fall silent the moment she walked into a room. The way they'd sit a little too close on the couch, their laughter shared in a world that didn't include her. Once, she came home early to find them startled, almost guilty, before they quickly composed themselves. "It's nothing," Emma told herself. "I'm just imagining things." After all, Daniel respected her mother, and her mother was her closest confidant. Why would she ever doubt them? But the feeling wouldn't go away. She felt like an outsider in her own home, a ghost watching her life unfold around her. Margaret would offer comforting words. "Every marriage has its seasons. Dear, don't overthink it. Daniel loves you." Emma wanted so desperately to believe her. She needed to. Then came the sleepless nights, her mind replaying every interaction, every shared glance, every lingering touch between her husband and her mother. She recalled the way Daniel's smile warmed when Margaret praised him, or how his hand would brush against hers for just a second too long. They were tiny, seemingly meaningless moments, but when stitched together, they formed a chilling pattern that made her stomach twist. One Saturday, Daniel left early for another client meeting. Emma offered to help her mother clean the guest room, but Margaret's refusal was unusually sharp, almost defensive. That night at dinner, Emma sat in silence. Watching them, they laughed and talked, completely oblivious to her quiet despair. It was as if she wasn't even there. The final, devastating blow came on an ordinary Tuesday evening. Lily was asleep, and the house was quiet. Daniel had left his phone on the kitchen counter while he took a shower. It was a simple, careless mistake, but it would change everything forever. A message notification lit up the screen. The sender's name was M. Emma's heart began to pound. She told herself it could be anyone marked from work, maybe, but her hands were already trembling as she picked up the phone. With a deep, shaky breath, she opened the message. It wasn't from Mark. It was from her mother, Margaret, and the words on the screen were not the words of a mother-in-law to her son-in-law. They were intimate, familiar, and utterly devastating. "I miss you. Can't wait until we can be alone again. Tonight was wonderful." And below that, a chain of previous messages. A secret history of stolen moments, whispered promises, and a love that was never meant to be hers. The world around Emma dissolved. The quiet hum of the refrigerator, the ticking clock on the wallet, all faded into a roaring in her ears. Every memory, every shared smile, every comforting word from her mother was now poisoned. The two people she trusted most in the world, her husband and her own mother, had betrayed her in the most unthinkable way. As the bathroom door opened and Daniel walked out, toweling his hair, he saw her standing there, phone in hand, her face a mask of utter devastation. The look in her eyes told him everything. There were no more lies to tell, no more secrets to hide. The perfect life Emma Turner had cherished was nothing but a beautiful, elaborate lie. And in the deafening silence of her shattered home, she finally understood that the people you love the most are the ones who can hurt you the deepest. Her idyllic family was a sham, and she was trapped in the wreckage. The question now was not how this happened, but what on earth she would do next. To the outside world, my life was a picture of suburban perfection. A beautiful home, a loving husband named Daniel, a sweet 6-year-old daughter, Lily, and my elegant mother, Margaret, always there to lend a hand. We were the family everyone admired. But beneath the surface of that perfect picture, a quiet, unsettling shift was taking place. It began subtly. Daniel started coming home late, his explanations a little too polished, his warmth a little too distant. His phone, once left casually on the counter, was now glued to his side. He'd slip out of the room for calls, returning with a smile that never quite reached his eyes. At the same time, my mother seemed to be blooming. She wore brighter lipstick, new perfumes, and her laughter always seemed loudest when Daniel was around. I'd catch them exchanging glances across the dinner table, quick charged moments that made my stomach clench, but I pushed the thoughts away. How could I even entertain such a monstrous idea? My mother was my rock, my moral compass. Daniel was my partner, the man who had stood by me through everything. I told myself I was just stressed, overthinking things, but the feeling of unease wouldn't leave. It grew with every whispered conversation that stopped the moment I entered a room. Every time I found them sitting just a little too close on the couch. The laughter in our home started to sound different, secretive, like it belonged only to them. Sleep became a luxury I couldn't afford. I'd lie awake next to Daniel, studying his sleeping face, wondering if I was sharing a bed with a stranger. By the time I went to bed each night, the doubt had settled into a quiet, constant ache. I didn't have proof, but my heart was screaming a truth I wasn't ready to hear. The walls of my perfect life were closing in, and the betrayal had already begun. The morning sunlight streamed through the curtains, but it offered no warmth. My world had started to tilt in strange, unsettling ways. Even the familiar sounds of my home, the hum of the fridge, the creak of the floorboards, felt sinister, as if the walls themselves were holding their breath, hiding secrets. Then came the forgotten phone. Daniel had rushed out for an early meeting, leaving his phone buzzing on the nightstand. I tried to ignore it, telling myself to trust my husband, but the buzzing persisted, a relentless siren call to my gnawing curiosity. I picked it up, telling myself I was just checking for an emergency. The screen lit up with a name that turned my blood to ice. Mom. The message preview was short, but it shattered my world in an instant. Last night was amazing. I can still feel you near me. My hand trembled, the phone suddenly feeling like a block of ice. With my breath caught in my throat, I opened the message thread. What I found was a sickening trail of betrayal stretching back for months. Intimate, tender, explicit messages chronicling secret meetings, whispered promises, and nights spent together. There were pictures, references to moments that happened right under my own roof, while I slept soundly in the next room. Each word was a fresh wound, a new tear in the fabric of my reality. This wasn't just infidelity. It was a profound act of treachery from the two people I trusted most in the world. I sank onto the edge of the bed, the pain too heavy for tears. It felt like a weight pressing down on my chest, making it hard to breathe. A flood of memories washed over my family dinners, shared laughter, moments I'd sought my mother's advice on my marriage. She'd always told me to be patient, to trust Daniel. Now I knew why. Hours passed before I could move. I didn't delete a single message. I didn't say a word. When Daniel came home that evening, he kissed my cheek, greeted our daughter, and sat down for dinner, as if nothing had happened. My mother joined us, her smile warm, her chatter light and easy. To anyone watching, we were the perfect family. But to me, every glance they shared was electric with guilt. I excused myself, my heart pounding in my chest. They had no idea, I knew. And in that moment of chilling clarity, I realized I couldn't confront them. Not yet. I needed irrefutable proof, something they could never deny or twist. I needed to see the truth with my own eyes, no matter how much it would break me. The following days turned me into a silent observer. I watched them with a new, painful awareness. Daniel's sudden eagerness to help my mother with errands, the soft, intimate tone their voices took when they spoke to each other. He started having late meetings on the very nights my mother happened to stay over. Their answers to my casual questions were too rehearsed, too perfect. One afternoon, I saw my mother's handbag lying open on the counter. Tucked inside was a receipt from a luxury hotel not 30 minutes away. The date on it matched one of Daniel's supposed work trips. My hands were steady as I slipped it back, but a storm was raging inside me. Every discovery was another nail in the coffin of the life I once knew. My nights were restless. I lay beside Daniel, listening to the rhythm of his breathing, wondering how many lies were hidden behind his familiar face. He was a stranger to me now, a hollow shell of the man I thought I loved. I started keeping a secret journal, documenting every lie, every inconsistency, every stolen glance. It was my way of taking back control, of turning my overwhelming pain into a focused purpose. I would not be a victim in my own home. One evening, as my mother played with Lily in the living room, I stepped outside into the cold night air. The sting on my skin was a welcome distraction, a grounding force. I realized that exposing them wouldn't just end my marriage. It would shatter the image of the mother I had idolized my entire life. This was a betrayal so deep it changes a person forever. Staring up at the dark sky, I made a silent vow. I wouldn't act out of anger or desperation. I would uncover everything, and when the time was right, they would both have to face the ugly truth they had worked so hard to bury. For now, I would play my part, the devoted wife, the loving daughter. They built their affair in the shadows, and I would use that same silence to bring it all into the light. Thank you for watching. If you're invested in this story, make sure to subscribe and turn on notifications so you don't miss what happens next. Her plan had taken weeks to form. It started the moment she realized yelling and crying wouldn't work. Confrontation would just give her husband, Daniel, and her own mother, Margaret, a chance to twist the story, to play the victims, and to make her doubt her own sanity again. No, what she needed was cold, deliberate control. She wanted them to face their lies, not in private, but under the blinding lights of public shame. So, she began to act. She played her part flawlessly, the smiling, devoted wife and daughter she once genuinely was. Every home-cooked meal, every kind word, was a carefully rehearsed line in her play. But behind that calm mask, Emma was building her case. She started with digital evidence, transferring every message between Daniel and her mother from his phone to her computer. She printed copies, took screenshots of emails, and meticulously labeled every file with dates and times. She checked bank statements, credit card bills, call records. Every document screamed the same truth. They were continuing their affair without a second thought, convinced she was blissfully unaware. The pain was crushing, but her resolve was stronger. She promised herself she wouldn't crumble again. This time, their betrayal would cost them everything. The next step was physical proof. When Daniel was at work and her mother was out, Emma installed tiny cameras in the living room and guest bedroom, hiding them in picture frames and air vents. It felt wrong, invasive, but they had already violated something far more sacred. She needed the kind of evidence that would leave no room for denial. Days passed before she could bring herself to check the footage. When she did, her stomach turned. There they were, on the screen, laughing, touching, kissing, in her home. There was no guilt, no hesitation. They moved through her house like they owned it. The images burned into her mind, solidifying her purpose. Her next move was quiet and strategic. She hired a private investigator who confirmed everything she already knew. The PI's report was devastatingly detailed, dates, times, and photos of Daniel and Margaret meeting at a small apartment 2 towns away. An apartment rented in her mother's name but paid for with her husband's credit card. Reading it, Emma felt the deep sadness that had consumed her curdle into something else. Icy clarity. She no longer wanted apologies. She wanted an ending. That evening, she walked into a home that smelled of roasted chicken. Daniel was there, smiling. Her mother was in the kitchen, humming. For a split second, it almost felt like the life she used to have, but the illusion shattered. She could barely look at them without seeing the footage, hearing their lies. Still, she smiled. She played along. The time had come. Emma printed 2 identical evidence packages. One was for Daniel's company, which had a strict code of conduct. His reputation was everything to him. The other was for her mother's church community, where Margaret had built an entire identity as a respectable, moral guide. This wouldn't just hurt them, it would destroy the very images they cherished more than anything. On Monday morning, after Daniel left for work, she dropped his envelope in the outgoing mail. That afternoon, she sent the second package anonymously to the church committee. Both contained the same damning photos, messages, and documents. No explanation, just the raw, undeniable truth. That evening, she sat at the kitchen table, calmly sipping tea. Daniel came home, distracted, completely unaware that his world was about to implode. Her mother stopped by later, bringing a gift for their daughter, Lily. They chatted as if nothing was wrong. Emma watched them, her heart steady. The need to scream or cry was gone. 2 days later, the chaos began. Daniel got a call at work that left him pale and shaken. He came home early, frantically pacing, demanding to know who could have done this. Soon after, her mother arrived, completely distraught, clutching her phone. The whispers had already started at her church. They both looked at Emma, a silent question in their eyes. She didn't say a word, she just pointed to the kitchen counter. Next to her wedding ring was a single note. It read, "You built your happiness on my trust. Now see how it feels to watch it burn." By the time Daniel looked up, Emma and Lily were gone. The closets were empty. Her car was missing, and her phone was disconnected. She had vanished, leaving behind only the evidence of their betrayal and the suffocating silence of a house that once held love. The trap had closed perfectly. Months passed. In their old town, Daniel's career was over, and Margaret's reputation had turned to ash. The story spread like wildfire, a shocking tale of a mother betraying her own daughter. They tried to cling to each other, but guilt is corrosive. The arguments started. He blamed her for the exposure. She blamed him for his carelessness. Their lives shriveled into a daily reminder of what they had lost. Meanwhile, Emma had moved across the country to a small coastal town. She found a quiet house by the ocean where she and Lily could start over. The salty air and the sound of the waves became her therapy. There were nights when the memories crept in, but the tears had dried up the day she drove away. She rebuilt her life with quiet determination, finding work as an interior designer. Her new neighbors saw a kind, reserved woman who kept to herself. She never spoke of the past. Silence had become her closest friend. Then, nearly a year after she left, an envelope arrived. No return address. Inside was a single photo of Daniel and Margaret arguing outside a cheap motel, their faces aged with stress and resentment. On the back, 5 words in an unfamiliar handwriting. Secrets never stay buried forever. Someone else was watching. Someone else knew. That night, Emma burned the photo in her backyard. As the flames consumed the image, she felt no fear, only a weary understanding. The past would always leave a shadow. But as she turned back to the house where her daughter slept peacefully, she realized she was finally free. Not because she had erased the past, but because she had survived it. The world had already delivered its own kind of justice. She didn't need revenge anymore. She had taken from them the one thing they could never get back, her forgiveness, and in its place she had found peace. Thank you so much for watching. If this story moved you, please consider liking this video and subscribing for more content. We'll see you in the next one.